right? We can't go through divorce and not change.
Uh-huh.
It's impossible. And so when you have when you understand from a neurological standpoint, from a biological standpoint, from a mind body connection standpoint, what it means to evolve your identity, you are able to maintain your power
Uh-huh.
as opposed to slipping into that victim mentality that kind of sets you down this rabbit hole of blame and shame and resentment.
Welcome to Divorce Diaries, where attorney Cary Jacobson brings you real stories, hard truths, and practical advice on navigating divorce and family law. Whether you're going through it, considering it, or just curious, this is your place for clarity, confidence, and resilience.
Welcome back to Divorce Diaries Lessons from the Trenches, the podcast where we have honest conversations about the realities of divorce, co-parenting, and starting over so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, attorney, mediator, and founder of Jacobson Family Law. Today's guest is someone who brings both legal expertise and deep emotional insight to the divorce process, Sharri Freedman. Sharri is the founder of Potomac Coaching, a boutique coaching practice that supports women who have outgrown their marriages and are ready to embrace what she calls the liberated method. Sharri's unique background as a former divorce attorney and certified coach allows her to guide women through both the logistical and the emotional challenge of divorce, helping them let go of what no longer serves them and step into a more empowered future. Sharri, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I always like to start talking with our guests about their journey. So can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? I know that you have, practiced as a divorce attorney for years. So what inspired you to transition into coaching?
Yes, great question. So I have practiced family law for many, many years. I still hold my legal license. I've been a divorce professional for now over 30 years, which is kind of crazy to even say out loud. And there was a time several years ago where I was kind of at a crossroads, kind of thinking I had been working part-time and just like, where do I go now? My children were getting older, getting ready. One was off, getting ready to go off to college, and kind of examining, what I wanted to do. How could I help my clients more than I was already doing? There's a lot of conflict, as you know, in litigated divorce, which is kind of where I was primarily in that, getting clients ready for what potentially could be a court proceeding, while most of the cases did resolve either through mediation or through negotiated settlement. There is that combative,
Right.
that sort of battle process, which just never leaves any side happy, right? And there's always, and so in my quest for like, what do I want to do now with my life? I discovered divorce coaching and kind of took me down that path, did a intensive certification, realized this is what I'm meant to do, really fell in love with the ability to help clients not just get through the process, but really give them what the practices, the tools that they need to live their best life post divorce. And so I did some divorce coaching for a while after my certification, and then learned about the NIE method, which is neuro identity evolution, which was a game changer. I went through this methodology for myself as an entrepreneur, and the tools and practices that I learned and that I use and embody every single day, I realized this is the missing piece. This is what my people need in order to really be able to not just, like I said, get through the divorce, but to evolve their identity, because divorce is an identity evolution, right? We can't go through divorce and not change. It's impossible. And so when you have when you understand from a neurological standpoint, from a biological standpoint, from a mind body connection standpoint, what it means to evolve your identity, you are able to maintain your power as opposed to slipping into that victim mentality that kind of sets you down this rabbit hole of blame and shame and resentment and all those things that a lot of times we find clients in when they're in that litigated conflict posture.
Right. I'm fascinated by this. So can you explain kind of how you guide a client through that process? What does that look like on a practical matter?
Yeah, so there's so many pieces that go into it, but sort of to summarize it, it's really looking at how can I take radical personal responsibility. That's kind of a cornerstone of a lot of what I teach is like take radical personal responsibility for your choices and that there's always a choice. And so often we find ourselves thinking, I don't have any options. This isn't a choice. Like I don't have any choices here. And when you step back, when you can zoom back a little bit and realize, oh, wait a minute, there are choices.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be good ones.
Right.
And oftentimes in divorce, there aren't good choices, but there's always choice. And so really teaching clients how to take that personal responsibility for the choices that they're making. And then we create a vision, right? So we will do some visioning and really like look far ahead into the future to identify what are the feelings that we want to be feeling. You don't even necessarily have to know exactly where you want to be, where you're going to be living, who you're going to be with, but it's more of an embodiment of like, how do I want to be feeling? How do I want to show up through the process and beyond? And then you use that as your anchor to bring you back to for every decision that you need to make. It's like, is this bringing me closer to my vision or further away? And if it's bringing you further away, then you get to stop and you get to say, okay, I see it's bringing me further away. Do I want to choose this path or do I want to come back and say, wait a minute, maybe I want to choose something else?
Uh-huh.
It really is that anchor. The visioning is a really, really important piece that a lot of people skip or don't even realize they need to be thinking about it when they're in it, right? Because when you're in it, it's so myopic. You're so like, I just need to get to tomorrow. I can't think about a week from now, a month from now, 3 years from now. But it's so important to be able to zoom out a little bit and think about that in order to make those decisions. Because if you make decisions that are only about today or tomorrow, it could hurt you down the road because it may not be what you actually want 3 years from now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's difficult for people in general, much less people going through this major transition, to really sit back and think, what do I want? Right. And so, because many times people don't necessarily think about that. They're really like just trying to make it from one day to the next. And so I totally understand why that's such a critical piece, but it is one that would be very difficult for many people.
Yeah, and it is, and it's because we're so used to the familiar, right?
Yep.
And so we get comfortable in the familiar, even if the familiar is uncomfortable, right? Like even if you're in a situation where it's you're unhappy, things are not going the way that you had envisioned. Maybe there's some physical violence, or maybe there's emotional abuse, maybe not, right? Maybe it's just we're growing apart, but and it's uncomfortable, but the thought of the unknown, the divorce, right? What happens? What would life be like is so scary and it's so unfamiliar that our system likes to bring us back to, well, maybe it's not so bad. Well, maybe if we just wait, maybe things will get better, but nothing changes if nothing changes. And so what I love about the liberated method, which is my approach to doing divorce different, it's really is that it gets you to step back and think like, how can I do this intentionally? How can I do this, have a conscious divorce? How can I think about this in a way that maybe I'm not thinking about it right now? And when you begin to realize, oh, my thoughts are not trustworthy, right? Because sometimes we can't believe a thought we think because our brain is going to feed us all the things that it thinks we want to hear, right? To keep us in that familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we can kind of zoom back and go, oh, wait a minute, is that true? Is that really true?
Right.
Is that really where I want to be? And then have the tools and practices to be able to shift that, because our thoughts create our feelings drive our actions create our reality always. And so we get caught in this thought loop. And so what I love about this methodology is that it gives you a way to get out of that, right? We can say, oh, I don't want to feel this way. So what do I need to think in order not to feel that? Or I don't want to act this way. So what do I need to feel so that I don't act this way? And when I feel that, I think different. And then you get a different result. So if you're not happy with your results, you have the power to change it.
Right.
And it's always about you, the client. This is not about me or what I want. This is always bringing it back to, what do you want? What would you do in this situation? Or what would your future version of you do in this situation? And that always helps the client be able to go, oh, wait a minute, right? If I think about the future version of me, oh, she wouldn't be doing that.
Right. Yeah. And then that will impact all of the other things. So setting that as the anchor makes total sense. One of the biggest struggles many of our clients face is that indecision, the constant back and forth. And by the time they've called our office, many times they've kind of made the decision that they're going to divorce, but it can take people a long time to get there. How do you help clients get out of that cycle and start making those confident decisions?
Yeah. So I love that. I love that you asked me this, because I've been doing a lot of research and work on the should I stay or should I go? That indecision, like what makes someone stay in a marriage way longer
Right.
than maybe they want to.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of it is that we get stuck in the familiar, right? And it's the fear of making a mistake, right?
Yes.
Especially for a lot of the women that I work with, they are, successful in their careers. They're great parents. If you look outside, right, on paper,
Uh-huh.
it looks like they have a perfect life.
Right.
Right. Like they've got the, 2 kids and the family home and the dog and the, beautiful cars and the career, the 2 income households. And or maybe they are fortunate that one of them can step back and work part-time or volunteer, but they're well educated. Like they, on paper, everything looks perfect, but inside they're unhappy. Something's off, something's not right. And yet it's this fear of like, oh my God, if I leave, I've failed, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And so ego comes in, right? And we all have ego, right? And when our ego comes in, it'll shut everything down, because it's like, oh my God, what are people going to think of me?
Right.
And I can't fail. I don't fail. That's not who I am. And so it's helping clients to recognize that, oh, you're not a failure, right? Your marriage ending doesn't make you a failure. Your marriage may have failed, but you are not a failure. And so often we attach to that feeling, like it's, I'm sad, right? It's not, it becomes, you become the feeling instead of recognizing you are not that.
Right. I think feeling the worry of failing, and also feeling, like you mentioned, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
How are people going to judge me? And that may come out in a different way, like I'm staying for the kids, or something along those lines. But I think really at the root of it, that is many reasons why people ultimately say is feeling like they are failing, or wanting, not knowing how people are going to perceive them.
Yeah. And I think the staying for the kids comes up
Mhm.
so often. And what people don't realize, and what's so important to understand, is that they think they're doing their kids a service,
Right.
right? I'm going to stay for my kids. My kids don't need, it's not their fault that I'm unhappy, or it's not their fault that we don't get along. But your kids are so smart,
Yes.
and they are picking up. And so it's what I always love to ask my clients is, what is the impact on your kids
Mhm.
of seeing you and your partner not communicating with one another, not having intimacy, maybe sleeping in separate bedrooms?
Mhm.
What is that impact having on your children? What is that teaching them? Is that the lessons that you want to be carrying? What are you dripping on your kids?
Right.
And is that better than you leaving? And yes, there's going to be pain. Divorce is painful. There's no way to avoid it. Whether you want it or not, there's going to be pain. But once you get through that, there's so much possibility.
Right.
If you stay, there's going to be pain, no matter how hard you try to pretend that everything's okay, your kids pick up on that. And so it's really like, oh, wait a minute, what am I teaching them?
Right.
And when you can realize and recognize that, you're then able to maybe make a more informed choice. Do I stay or do I go? And sometimes people will choose to stay. And what I also love about this liberated method is you can choose to stay, but do it intentionally
Right.
and make different choices, because you can choose to be happy and take ownership of, I'm choosing to stay and I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just choosing to stay and like my life's going to be miserable for the next 10 years, but I'm staying for the sake of the kids, because then that makes you a martyr and thrusts you into victimhood.
Right. And then also, I think the other piece to that for people to consider, if the argument is, I want to stay for the kids, even if you are putting on the best performance, right? That everything is wonderful and great. Those young adults have challenges as well. Most people will do it once the kids have left for college, thinking that that's a better time. But I think that a lot of times that can be another challenging time, because now this young adult has thought, well, what was it all a lie?
Mhm.
And I think it's a different
Absolutely.
scenario, but it's still impactful.
Absolutely. And I've also heard and from adult children of divorce whose parents stayed for the sake of the kids, there's a lot of resentment from the
Right.
children. Why did you stay for me? Because that puts so much pressure on the kids
Right.
that, oh my God, my parents were miserable because of us. Like they make it, their ego comes in.
Right.
And then that, like, so if you're trying to avoid your kids needing therapy because of your divorce, you may be creating a situation anyway where your kids need therapy. So what I like to say to my clients is, your kids are probably going to need therapy. It may be something you did. It may be something some kid said to them on the playground. It could be a teacher. We have no idea what's going to create a trauma for our children.
Right.
So when you are able to put yourself first, it's actually not selfish. It's actually in service of everyone around you, because when you are full, when you are at your best, you give all of that to everyone else. You're operating at a higher frequency. And when your frequency is low and you're in that low level sadness, anger, frustration, resentment, bitterness, you're dripping all of that unconsciously on everyone around you. And when you're in a higher level frequency, when you're feeling joyful, when you're feeling happy, confident, loving, compassionate, gracious, gratitude, all of that, you're dripping all of that on people.
Right.
So, you get to choose. And so what would you rather drip on your kids?
Absolutely. Now, I know that there is lots of fear about what comes after divorce, right? Like that's so much part of the, do I stay or do I go? Whether it's fear of being alone, starting over, whether they're going to have the financial, security. How do you help women manage those fears and begin to see divorce as an opportunity instead of a failure, as we were kind of talking about?
Yeah. So I think part of it is, using some of my legal wisdom and experience in helping clients really think about, what is it? Like getting organized, first of all, and like, do you know all your assets? Do you
Right.
know what the law says? Have you had your legal consultation so that you have your legal knowledge? Because as a coach, even though I'm a lawyer, I can't give legal advice, kind of like you as a mediator.
Yep.
You can kind of give general overview, but you can't give legal advice. So really making sure that the client understands you need to have your legal knowledge. And then taking that legal knowledge and really looking at it. What does it mean? Because that I can help them with. What is it that you want? How does that work for you and your family? So that kind of alleviates some fears, just knowing, like just having some information and then being able to look at it from oh, okay, this is what we've got. This is what maybe my partner wants. This is what I want. And this is where we might be able to get creative. And here are all my options. Like just having a more a solid understanding of like what the process looks like. And being able to come and ask questions and not worry about, oh my God, am I going to get a bill for this because I need it repeated to me several times. So
Right.
just knowing that that you have someone to talk to, having that sounding board and an objective perspective can be very comforting. From the financial piece, because there's a lot of financial fear around going from one household to two, whether you are the primary breadwinner or not, whether, you know, there's a lot of money or a little bit of money to divide up. There's always this fear of like, are we going to be able to make it? Am I going to be able to, what is my life going to look like? And so again, it's kind of helping clients to put together that kind of like very basic, what are my expenses? What do I anticipate? What information do I need to go and gather? And then once they have information, who else might I need on my team, right? Do I need to have a CDFA or a financial advisor or someone like that? If it's very complicated, if the finances are very complicated, or even if they're not, just to get some basic understanding. So who else do I need? And then using the practices of understanding, okay, from a practical, tactical, I understand the numbers, but my system is still feeling uncomfortable because this is stepping out of that zone of familiarity. And so the work that I get to do with my clients is, once we have that sort of baseline, is like, okay, how can we create the internal safety? And that's one of the really big missing pieces, is because you can have the best strategy, you can hire the best divorce attorney, you can have the best mediator, you can have the best financial advisor, but if your system is not feeling safe internally, you're not going to make aligned choices. You're going to be making it from a place of scarcity as opposed to abundance, and you will have regret. So the work is creating that safety internally, which is what I do with clients. And it's a whole process that we do over a course of 6 months when I work with clients privately. And it's just building internal safety around, it's safe to move forward. It's safe to have everything I desire. It's safe to want to be happy. It's safe to have peace, because for a lot of people who have been in this sort of chaotic household, they say they want peace of mind, quiet, but when they're in that, it's so unfamiliar that the system actually wants to bring them back into that chaos, even though the chaos was so uncomfortable.
Right. Because it's what they know.
It's what they know, exactly. And so when they can understand, oh, wait a minute, my system is trying to sabotage my up level, my wanting to be over here, right, in that peace, being happy, being calm, because the other is so familiar. And that's when we get the questioning of like, did I make a mistake? Maybe I ought to go back. Maybe right from that. Also, mistakes that happen in that, not necessarily going back, but in that I just want to be done, because the conflict can get very heightened. And if you have a more dominant spouse on one side and a more codependent spouse on the other side, the codependent spouse can often just want to get it over with. Let's get it done so that I can move on. And when you do that from a conscious, intentional place, yay. Right? But when you do it from a exhausted, depleted, scarcity, fearful state, you will always regret it.
Right.
And so being able to discern, what is it that I'm feeling? Is this intentional, or is this a giving up rather than an intentional decision that this is what makes sense for me right now, and I'm going to own that.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something that we see often, whether it's because, like you mentioned, that person is not the dominant, one in the relationship, or just because things have dragged out for such a long time, and they've been in this back and forth for a long time, and they're just over it, and so it is definitely a challenge that we see regularly, even for those folks who are willingly wanting out of the relationship, but it's wanting to be over and done with the process sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the misconceptions around like working with a coach is, oh, I only need to work with a coach if it's super high conflict,
Mhm.
right? But really, even in an amicable divorce, there's going to be conflict, right? There's always some level of conflict. It's just like how high is the conflict? But this process, this really coming back to like, who am I? Who am I going to be? Who do I want to be? Like this divorce gives you an opportunity to almost reinvent
Right.
who you get to be because you've been this partner, this spouse, a wife, a mother, and now you're going into this like single parent.
Mhm.
You're no longer someone's partner. You're no longer a spouse. And that can be really, it can impact you in a way that you don't even realize sometimes. And so there's an important grieving process that has to happen, even if you want it, even if you're like, or even if you're resigned to it or accepting of it, there's still a mourning period. And what shocks so many of my clients is they feel like, well, I've done that already. Like I grieved at the very beginning. So
Right.
I'm done with that. And then the legal divorce happens and they're like, oh my God, why am I feeling all these
Yeah.
feelings? And it's because you really truly haven't
Right.
grieved the way that
Mhm.
you need to. There's a mourning, there's that when that legal paper comes
Yeah.
across, right? There is a mourning, a death of the marriage, of the hopes and dreams. There's so much loss that needs to be felt in order for you to let it go and be able to move on into that next chapter.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the work that I do with clients is I give them awareness around that and then space to be able to feel what they need to feel. And so we do a lot of work on feeling our feelings, which none of us are taught to do, right? We're always taught like, suck it up, buttercup. Um, I'll give you something to cry about. Like we've heard that, right, from our parents. And so we're not taught how to actually feel. And it's so important to be able to feel everything. So this is not a bypassing of the feelings in order
Right.
to get to a better place. This is feeling through the feelings to get to that better place.
Absolutely. I so many times where we've had clients who were the person who initiated the divorce, right? And they've signed the agreement already, and it's oftentimes during that uncontested hearing that there are still tears, there's still those feelings, because that that made it final. And so I totally recognize what you're saying there, because it's like, even though they may have been the one to initiate it, they didn't necessarily go through all of the feelings. And now it's like, oh, I didn't realize this was still here.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
okay to have that and know that
absolutely.
it's okay and to
Yep.
expect it. I think a lot, like as divorce professionals, sometimes we assume that clients understand all how
Mhm.
everything's going to work because we've just done it for so
Right.
long.
Yep.
And what always surprises me and what I'm really mindful of now is that they really need it to be spoon fed almost like, okay, this is what you can expect to happen. This is what like, oh, they're going to file an answer, for example, and probably a counterclaim if it's a contested case, if you haven't already reached an agreement, and it's going to say all kinds of things that are going to be hurtful. That's
Mhm.
just part of the process.
Yep.
Expect that. Whereas, and they're like, oh, and it's still going to hurt. But when you
Mhm.
know, like, oh, this is part of the process and not like, oh, this is only happening to me
Right.
and my particular spouse is just being a jerk. It's like, no, this is part of what happens when we move forward in a contested
Right.
manner. It doesn't make it hurt less, but it makes it like, oh, okay, I don't have to take it so personally.
Right. Yep.
And coaching can often help with that, right? It's like when you get stuck in that personal, you make it about you. When the ego comes in, that's when we don't make good decisions, right? Because
Right.
we're operating from that fear.
Absolutely. What is one mistake that you commonly see clients make, and how could they avoid it?
Hmm. So something that's coming to mind for me is um, wanting to keep the house
Mhm.
at all costs. And for some people, it makes sense to keep the house. For others, maybe not. The mistake is not in the making the decision. The mistake is in not getting all your knowledge, not
Right.
understanding what does it mean to keep
Mhm.
the house, because it's not simply, okay, we're going to work out an agreement so that I can keep the house. It's what comes later. Can I
Right.
actually afford to keep the house?
Right.
Because you may get to keep the house, but you might not be able to maintain the house.
Mhm.
And so what have you given up in exchange to keep the house? And now you actually have to sell the house anyway, because you
Right.
can't maintain the house. Um, Not finding out if you qualify to refinance. If your mortgage doesn't allow an assumption,
Mhm.
sometimes, oftentimes, people will work out an agreement where they refinance, they get to refinance within a certain period of time. And if they don't refinance, then the house gets sold and they don't realize, oh, I'm not going to qualify.
Right.
And so again, they've given up things, maybe they've given up retirement, which I see happen a lot,
Mhm.
and it's not apples to apples. So when you
Right.
have your knowledge of like, I understand I'm giving up retirement and it's not apples to apples and I'm okay with that, it's being
Mhm.
intentional, that then there's not the regret. It's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can find out if I can refinance before I agree to this. Because if you can't refinance, then maybe you're going to agree to something else.
Right.
So I think
Absolutely.
that's one mistake that just I think happens a lot.
Yeah. We see it regularly as well, and I'm sure you have a list of professionals. We have lists of professionals, mortgage lenders, etc. And especially with, we always encourage our clients to get that information before they, make that final determination, because we do want to make sure that they know going into it. Is this the best option for us? All right. Before we end, is if someone is listening and just beginning to question, that should I stay or should I go? What is the very first step you would recommend they take?
So, well, working with me would be would be a good step, and I say that jokingly, but I also really say it sincerely, because the sooner that you can begin to understand
Mhm.
what are my options, right? And really
Right.
understand that you have options and not get stuck in the should I stay or should I go, but I don't know how to answer that, so I'm just going to shove it aside for now. Because
Mhm.
what I don't want to see happen for that person who is in that should I stay or should I go is waking up 5 years from now in the exact same place.
Yep.
Because you can begin to understand, what does it look like? What does the divorce process actually look like? And maybe you decide not to go, but you at least have an understanding of what it is that you are not doing and
Yep.
what you are choosing, right?
Mhm.
Because there are trade-offs, right? Because as you stay in your marriage, things continue to your assets continue to grow. Just different things to consider that you might not have otherwise considered. So I think that really having a solid understanding of your options and knowing that, barring any abuse that's happening, like that's a whole different topic, but if it's just that I'm unhappy, there's just this, we've grown apart, which happens, right? Because especially if you marry young, right?
Mhm.
And now you're, getting ready to be like midlife,
Right.
your priorities change, your values change, and so sometimes people just grow apart.
Mhm.
It's okay. And so knowing that, like, what are my options, and if I choose to stay, I can be happy, and if I choose to leave, I can be happy. And just
Absolutely.
understanding that, I think, is so powerful.
100%. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for joining me today, and the powerful work that you are doing with women who are ready to reclaim their lives after divorce. Can you share with our listeners how they can learn more about you and your services?
Sure. So, my website is a great place to start, potomaccoaching.com. You can also find me on Instagram. I am at Your Divorce Coach on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I do have a Facebook group. Um, But really I think the best place to find me would be to go to my website, and then you can sign up for my happiness hits, which is my weekly email. And then you can learn more about me and how I work.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put some of those links in our show notes for anyone who is looking to learn more about Sharri. And if you or someone you know needs legal support through divorce, custody, or co-parenting, the team at Jacobson Family Law is here to help. Schedule your consultation at our website, jacobsonfamilylaw.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and leave a review if you found it helpful. I'm Cary Jacobson, and remember, divorce isn't the end of your story. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Divorce Diaries. Remember, every journey is unique, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit jacobsonfamilylaw.com or call 443-726-4912 for support and guidance.